New Line Cinema.
First and foremost, thanks for watching. We've made it to 5 videos. I can now hold up my hand and say, I have this many. If you could like or subscribe, it would really be appreciated. It lets me know that people are out there watching. Thanks. This is another movie, like Cellar Dweller, that I somehow missed. Your local video store had quite an influence on your consumption back in the 80s. As always, I like to give some context. Alone in the Dark can come off as a Halloween knockoff, to a certain extent. Mental health patients escaping from a hospital and terrorizing a small town. I do find the use of mental illness as a horror trope a little tired in today's climate. I think we're aware that more harm comes to people with mental health issues than vice versa. Often they're taken advantage of, harassed, and harmed without much notice due to their diminished voices in modern society. So to use them as a villain in horror seems a bit lazy. Honestly, I'm not sure you could make a movie like this today. When you provide context for the story, things change. This was the 80s, and so we watch with that perspective in place. In the 80s, deinstitutionalization of mental hospitals was in full swing. A month prior to the 1980 election, President Jimmy Carter had signed the Mental Health Systems Act, proposing to continue the federal community mental health centers program. Then he lost the election, and Ronald Reagan became president. California had been on the forefront of deinstitutionalizing mental health facilities long before Reagan had become governor. But when he became president, he brought that energy to the rest of the country. And in 1981, Reagan signed the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act, which repealed most of the Mental Health Systems Act. And now we know the context. This fear of released mental patients running wild in a small town was a side effect of what was happening nationally. I know someone out there is hitting the thumbs down or yelling at the screen, "Why bring politics into this?" I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Horror and analogy go hand in hand. Horror movies have been political for quite some time, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. All that being said, none of that was the inspiration for this movie. It was just one of the big cultural concerns at the time. And it's one of the many films from the 70s and 80s that used mental health as a trope in horror movies. The actual inspiration was the New York City blackout of 1977. They couldn't afford to film a movie about escaped criminally insane individuals fighting the mafia during a blackout in New York City, so they moved the location to a small town and made it a home invasion-style thriller. Now, let me get my announcer voice on. 5 reasons you need to watch Alone in the Dark. Is that okay? Is that all right? That opening scene. Most of your classic horror movies have iconic opening scenes. I don't know if this reaches iconic level, but it is great at setting up the rest of the movie. We get to see directly into the mind of a significant character, letting you know just what we'll be dealing with. It's surreal and disturbing and confusing, and we understand, from the beginning, that common sense or rational thinking isn't on the menu with these characters. It'll be a wild ride, and all bets are off. The cast. I mean, you have Palance, Lando, and Pleasance in the same movie, and they get to play atypical roles from what we usually see from them. They really chew up the scenery as well. Jack Palance we know from about a million things, but most notably, for today's audience, City Slickers probably is the first movie that comes to mind. A movie for which he won an Academy Award. Or, you might know him from hosting Ripley's Believe It or Not, back in the early 80s. One of my favorites is Young Guns. Martin Landau also has a filmography too numerous to just mention a couple, but here I go anyway. Most notably is probably Ed Wood, where he plays Bela Lugosi. He was also in Cleopatra and The Greatest Story Ever Told. Do I have to talk much about Donald Pleasance? He managed to be a Bond villain, work with George Lucas, and portray the iconic Dr. Loomis in Halloween. He was even in one of my guilty pleasures, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Dwight Schultz might not be a name you recognize, but if you know who this character is, then he's been on your radar before. He also had a notable run on Star Trek The Next Generation and Voyager as Reginald Barclay. And if you still don't know who he is, you might know his voice. He's worked extensively as a voice actor in video games and animation. Also, check out Lin Shaye as a receptionist, sorta, near the beginning of Alone in the Dark. We, of course, know her from the Insidious movies, Nightmare on Elm Street, Something About Mary, and Critters. It's fun. If you want to see how fun this movie is, just check out this scene, taking place right after the blackout starts. Enough said. There's some great kill scenes in this movie. Every so often you come across these movies that treat them as if they're optional. This is horror. They are absolutely not optional. There's a scene with a bed and a knife that is extremely cringe-inducing. But throughout the movie, the scenes are well choreographed as well as acted. The ending. While, if you're paying attention, yes, the ending might be a little predictable, but I feel you need to be paying a fair bit of attention if you're going to see it coming. Otherwise, the ending has some fun twists to it that, while totally implausible, do their job. It helps that it's not a well-known film, so if you haven't seen it, you probably haven't seen that classic beginning or this fun ending. The perks of flying under the radar for 40 years. And there you have it, 5 reasons to see Alone in the Dark. It's a fun movie that doesn't get enough attention. Half the reason I'm doing these videos is to bring awareness to them. Let me know in the comments if you like the longer form, mini documentaries that I'd been doing, or if you like these smaller, get-to-the-point type videos. Or, let me know you don't like either, and what you would like to see. Again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon when we talk about, drumroll, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Take care.